Let me see. And which episode were we doing today here? What was
Today is the Federal Aviation Administration, so just a total left field. We've jumped from last week of Nero. It was like about 2000-ish years ago, and now we're just catapulting straight into the 20th century.
Now we have planes.
Yes, because why not? So I should probably introduce myself.
Yeah, the person who is talking the most so far is also the one that no one knows who he is. So
Yes. So
The podcast is actually being held hostage.
Indeed,
send,
yes. I have hijacked your podcast.
Please send $50,000 of non-consecutive cash to.
No, I'll take
box.
Bitcoin. I'm a young person. I'll accept Bitcoin.
He goes by the name of was it DJ Cooper or who? What's
DB Cooper?
DB Cooper. He has us hostage on some sort of passenger aircraft, and he's demanding 4 parachutes and $200,000 cash be brought aboard.
Yeah, I feel like I'm worth a little more than $200,000.
Well, I'm just
according to the Marvel universe, DB Cooper is also Loki, God of Mischief. So that means that we have Loki, God of Mischief, on the podcast today. So we're actually talking about
the Loki.
And it's sort of foreshadowing. It's foreshadowing.
Don't say that yet because I haven't written it yet.
Okay. Anyway, introduce yourself, Jonathan.
Yes. Okay. So welcome to Kakistocracy. I am Captain Jonathan Studelberg, call sign Pop-Tart. I'm a cargo pilot, first person on this podcast, I think, who could possibly be considered an expert since I do hold a bachelor's degree in the subject we're talking about today, but only kind of.
I've studied art history in college.
My doctorate's in art history.
What is your bachelor's degree in?
Aviation. Specifically, I'm actually looking at it now. It says aeronautics, professional unmanned aerial systems operator.
Hell yeah.
Which barely fits on the piece of paper. They had to shrink the font to make it fit.
This podcast is going places. We're getting real people that are actually...
This is our first celebrity guest.
I have a business degree. I don't know if that makes me an expert in like episode 4 since we're talking about like chicken corporations. But
you're close. You're adjacent.
Close enough. But thank you for coming on the pod. For those of you who don't know, I guess I'll introduce myself because... that's what you do in a podcast, even if you're one of the main hosts, just in case this is your first time listening, dear listener, which there's not that many of you, so there's a good chance it is. I am Paul. I'm one of the primary hosts, I guess you could say. We'll say the host in command. I don't know if we're trying to adopt aviation terminology for this podcast.
The first host.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm one of the main hosts who's usually on here. Paul, no call signs to speak of. I guess Pelican Dude, that kind of gets tossed around a lot. That's a story for another time. Johnny and I have known each other for a pretty long time, and Jonathan wanted to come on the pod and talk about airplane stuff, and so we said that could be fun. So that is how we got here.
Indeed.
Here we are. And,
Billy, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Billy. I'm also on the podcast every time.
All 6 times.
All 6 times. I'm not nearly as qualified as, someone with an aviation degree, but yeah, I'm here for a good time.
All right.
I don't have a call sign either. I guess BitPixel.
Yeah.
I'm Core Dynamics Commander Delta India Echo. I have a Rear Admiral rank in the Federation, and I'm ranked Combat Elite. I have about 2,200 hours logged, about 10,000 hyperspace jumps. So, I'm kind of a big deal.
He's a pretty big deal.
Slightly more hours at the helm of a spaceship than I do at a real aircraft.
I have flown a plane once in real life, and as we were talking earlier, I've studied a bit for the drone test, which apparently for our guest here is mere pittance child's
Yes.
play.
You took the Air Force test, right? Like,
Yes, I scored a 91 on the Air Force officers qualifying test, but that was more to do with like theories of flight and instrument. I know nothing about regulations. I know something about airspaces, but okay. That's very little.
That could be another time.
And weather reports.
Yes, indeed. So, I also, before we get underway, I'd also like to say that I am the original fan of Kakistocracy because I was the 3rd subscriber to the YouTube channel, which means I beat one of you guys to subscribing.
There's a YouTube channel?
There is.
Wait, this is a podcast?
I thought we were just hanging out.
I thought we were just I thought we were just flexing.
Which of you's been recording all of this?
I'm tied up in this airplane right now. I'm being held here against my will.
Oh my gosh. This would be hilarious if I actually get a call from the FAA after this. Like, Mr. Stewart, we have reason to believe you may have been involved in some threats. Pertaining to people talking. They use the word hostage.
You can't say bomb on a podcast.
Yes.
Oh, you just did. We got to bleep that out.
Oh, Shrek, yeah. Gotta edit. More editing for Paul.
Right. Don't worry. It happens all the time.
Just replace it with the N-word.
Somebody Jonathan gets a call. Somebody was trying to squawk 7500 from a desktop computer. We don't really know how that worked, but it was happening.
And it was your IP, so that's why we're calling you.
How do we mute Dylan?
All right, so we should probably actually start working through the notes. We're going to be here all day. So the FAA, right, the Federal Aviation Administration, or as we pilots like to call them, the Friends Against Aviation, quote, "We're not happy until you're not happy." So how do we get here, right? Why are we pilots
what
so
is
frustrated?
the FAA?
All right. Before just a small disclaimer before I start talking about the FAA. It's a comedy history podcast. We're here to make fun of some of the more interesting things along the way with aviation history. I don't want anyone to get an idea that I absolutely hate the FAA because they've got a pretty good safety record now as compared to the past. But we're going to talk about the past because it's more interesting. Also, it's not a political podcast, and we could get very political. So, what is the FAA? It's the Federal Aviation Administration. They make the rules for the air, but they weren't always the FAA.
I would imagine, without them, there would just be, MK2 oppressors flying around everywhere, spamming missiles at people. In GTA.
It would be pretty bad. It'd be a lot like Russia. Or maybe Central Africa.
So we could just build helicopters out of scrap metal in our backyard and fly them around because that sounds pretty fun.
We have to recycle the AKs. You got to make them out of AKs.
Yes.
We're already getting into the meta.
Yeah, how many AKs do you need for the recoil to propel you into the air and require classification as an aircraft?
So on that question was unironically answered by Randall Munro in one of his books. I think it was the Thing Explainer. Anyway, sorry. That's
you really are an expert. He had an answer for you.
Yeah.
And I think it was somewhere around 100 AKs becomes thrust weight ratio of 1.
Anyway. With the mass of a person on top, that's actually less than I expected, honestly.
Yeah, same.
It's not that many. But you can only fly for 2 seconds.
Yeah, you can fly until the magazine runs out.
What's the thrust weight ratio of a single AK? Because you could now, in theory, have an autonomous flying AK.
Oh, that's
true. Quadcopter of AKs.
A drone. But isn't there a federal regulation that we're not supposed to have armed drones or something like that? We're not supposed to attach
That's why
dangerous
we need the
things to them.
Yes.
FAA.
Man, we could talk about all kinds of crazy things.
FAA
I don't think there is a specific rule
Amendment
prohibiting
Second Amendment rights.
weapons aboard. It's weird. Anyway, so we should probably talk. We've used the word drone. We talked about flying AKs. We should probably define. What is an aircraft, right? near the FAA got to define these things. So Title 14, Chapter 1, Subchapter A, Part 1, Section 1, Subsection
my
1
favorite book
of the U.S. Code says that an aircraft is a device that is used or intended to be used for flight in the air.
So, like, if you had a plane that you put together really badly to the point where, like, it obviously couldn't fly, but it was technically your intent to fly it, but you're just an idiot, is that still technically an aircraft under this regulation?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, like, a broken plane is still an aircraft.
Yes, and because you built it yourself, it would be a home-built aircraft and thus subject to experimental amateur-built rules, which are very lax.
Oh, fun.
Yes, you can build your own airplane in your garage and fly it. It's fun. Basically, and then
look, I can build an atomic bomb in my garage. It's just a matter of whether the government shows up to stop me.
So if it's not a bird, if it's not a bird and it's not Superman, it's a plane, basically.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Even like a paper airplane, that is an aircraft.
So like what about like a wingsuit? Because that's, or like what about those quadcopter hoverboards? Have you seen those?
Yeah, that would be an aircraft.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, so it's unmanned ultralight aircraft, like a paper airplane that's exempt from registration because it weighs less than 0.55 pounds.
If you throw a paper airplane into an airport, will you can you get fined for that? Like if I throw it over the fence at LaGuardia?
That
probably wouldn't be very happy about it.
Yeah, technically you are operating. Well, you're not really operating.
Well, if it's less than half a pound, is it like, would they consider it just like you're throwing garbage into the airport, basically?
Yeah, I think they'd probably prosecute you under littering, creating a foreign object debris hazard to the aircraft.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What if I made it out of like a big poster board?
If you made a paper airplane that weighs over half a pound and chucks it into LaGuardia.
Yeah, now it must be registered.
When does a paper airplane not be like legally outside of the realm of litter?
Okay, that's
a
really good.
I think I've
now we're in a courtroom scenario where we're arguing before a judge. This is why courts exist, right? Because we have inane comments. Anyway, so yeah, how did we get here, right? How do we get arguing about at what point does a paper airplane require registration and all that? So we got to go back to the beginning, 1903, because there is no history prior to 1903 as far as aircraft are concerned. Kind of.
Don't the
some guys on a
Brazilians
beach
think that like there was a Brazilian guy that made an airplane?
Steal my thunder, Paul. You're literally one line ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no.
I was gonna say.
So back in 1903, some guys on a beach in North Carolina flew an airplane. For a few seconds. You may have heard of them, Orville and Wilbur Wright. Except maybe this one Brazilian guy, thanks Paul, got there first. His name was Alberto Santos Dumont. He's partly French. He might have had some French tendencies. He did live in France a lot.
There it is.
Yep.
I mean, the Wright brothers were pretty weird too, if I remember correctly. So.
Yeah, they basically were like, we don't have time for women. We're doing business. Anyway.
Yeah. Hey, that's that Sigma male grind set, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nikola Tesla was the same way. He was celibate his whole life.
Never chase a chick. Chase a check.
He was like, why would I spend time on women if I can just spend time on science?
Yeah. I think the Wright brothers were just like Tesla level wizards of science.
Yeah.
If you vol-cell enough, you become Dr. Manhattan.
Exactly. So it's kind of interesting. There's this controversy, and not a lot of people know about, especially in the U.S., about like, okay, who was the first person to fly? There's actually was an agreement signed. There's a whole controversy. We could do a whole episode on the controversy around the Wright Flyer. But the Wright Flyer is on display in D.C. That's the first airplane that's actually there. It's not a replica or anything.
I didn't know that.
Because the Wright brothers, they basically flew it. They cracked the engine on the fourth attempt, and they're like, okay, we're done. Put this in a crate. We're never touching it again. This is the first airplane. But basically, They actually got discredited initially in Europe and everything. Like I said, so that could be a whole episode. But
You
there's an
can't
agreement.
possibly create a mechanical bird. Huh.
Yeah, so there's this statement, basically the right, at this point it was kind of the right estate, agreed that neither the Smithsonian Institution nor its successors nor any museum or other agency, bureau, or facility administered for the United States of America by the Smithsonian Institution or its successors shall publish or permit to be displayed a statement or label in connection with or in respect of any aircraft, model, or design of earlier date than the 1903 Wright aeroplane, claiming in effect that such aircraft was capable of carrying a man under its own power in controlled flight.
And who wrote that down?
Basically the Wright estate. I think was. Keep
And they got that signed into law somewhere.
It was part of the agreement to display the Wright flyer in the Smithsonian. They're like, you can display this, but you have to call it the first airplane.
So like if they find out that like the aliens really did help the ancient Egyptians or whatever, and there's some ancient Egyptian plane, do they just call it like the ancient Egyptian fly-a-majig instead of a plane? Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, we've already established anything that is not a bird or Superman has to be a plane, right?
Realistically, it just sounds like the Wright estate is insecure and they know someone else beat them to
it. It does sound like that.
Yeah.
I also feel like there might be a smidge of like national pride involved.
Yes.
The Smithsonian being an arm of the government wants it's like we're the ones
that just
that did
the way.
it.
Big Smithsonian.
That's that American ingenuity.
Yeah, well, it's actually the Smithsonian didn't want to acknowledge the Wrights because at the same time there was this fellow named Samuel Langley, and he was government backed trying to build an airplane. And he had
private industry gets it done first. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So Langley was like a dismal failure.
Is he the one that the pervert facility is named after?
Yes.
The CIA. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Langley is named after a failed flight engineer person. That's what we're being told.
Perfect.
Yes, the NASA. Yes, because
here's your silver medal.
Yeah.
Technically bronze because the Brazilians got there first.
Yeah.
It was all the capoeira. They learned how to fly via like jiggling their hips in the right way.
Oh my gosh. Oh dear, we're already deeply sidetracked.
Welcome to Kakistocracy.
Yes. So, circa 1905, airplanes kind of become a thing, kind of. Give it 10 years of experimenting. They actually start to have a shred of, utility. And then I think something happened June 1914 involving an Archduke.
We talked about that.
Episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big world news. 1915 is actually the first year we have kind of a civil government organization related to aircraft, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, or NACA. If that sounds like NASA, it's because they are the kind of proto version of NASA.
Oh, neat. Okay.
What happened is NASA was created when they accidentally, in a copying error, the C kind of got duplicated and reversed, so it looked like an S.
That's much better.
Yeah, they just stuck with that. Yeah.
Yes, and true facts about NASA. No, I think that's something.
And now they're trying to fool. Now here they've grown into fooling the world that it's round.
So yeah, NACA becomes. They're kind of just there to do research and promote aviation. They're not really there to create laws or oversee anything. They're they're just there to do aeronautics research.
There's not really regulation
really
yet.
Good aeronautics research. Yeah. So
how plane go up? Question mark.
Yes, that's the question of the day. Yes.
Isn't it the air pressure? What's the actual effect called?
So if you dig deep enough into aerodynamics, you basically get to magic.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so you start with, the diagram of you got the four arrows on the airplane, that's the grade school understanding of lift, and then you got like the basic professional understanding of, the low pressure on the top of the wing, high pressure underneath it, or, wings shove air down.
What is that called, like the Bernoulli principle or something?
The Bernoulli
like
principle
that?
plus Newtonian lift, but then the deeper you dig, the more it becomes this esoteric mess of, the aero fluid dynamics, and, you just kind of throw your hands up and say, magic!
That reminds me somewhat of, like, the acoustics field, and me being such an acoustic boy, I do know a little bit about that. And it's like, yeah, at some point when you're trying to figure out how sound propagates in a room, it's just like, I don't know, when we make the room this shape, it sounds good.
Exactly. That's what NACA was doing. Like, when we make a wing this shape, it's better, and if we trim it here a little bit, it gets even better. And that's basically
Didn't they
what
have
they
that
were doing.
experimental plane with the backward swept wings? Because they were just like, well, we want to know what'll happen if we do this. If we put the wings on backwards, and it was
that's
just like,
a whole other
the plane
episode.
falls out of
the
the sky.
Yeah. It is super neat to think, like, because I mean, airplanes are such a integral part of the world now. But, like, being involved in that, like, all the research and development going into it is pretty exciting.
Isn't there, isn't it something crazy, like, around the world, there's something like 1 million people in the air at any given time?
That is
nuts.
Like
that.
That sounds about right,
bored.
maybe.
They're all bored out of their minds.
There's a few pilots having fun. Some of the pilots are also very bored, and then everyone on the plane, unless it's their first time on the plane, is also very bored.
Yeah, and 500,000 of them are on iPads. We've created
the most high velocity, high technology, sophisticated way of making everyone bored out of their minds while 6 miles above the surface of the earth.
Doing the most amazing thing that man has ever conceived of.
I think it is a testament to the FAA that we are bored flying, because as we're about to read here, people did not used to be bored flying.
So you're saying things used to be better, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, lay it on us, Chief.
So, about 100 years ago or so. So there's a war, right? World War One. Airplanes are used in the war. After the war, there's still airplanes, but now we aren't using them to bomb people or fight each other. So nobody really knows what to do with them. They're like, it's like, frick, got all these airplanes.
Is there a purpose for this besides killing each other?
You're figuring it out. So at first, you get barnstorming, right? This, the flying circuses. Airplanes, they're new, they're interesting. Most people haven't seen an airplane.
Yeah.
So you could just take an old, Curtiss Jenny, JN4, one of these old trainer airplanes specifically. You just fly around, go to a town, land in somebody's field, give rides, give shows, make a living that way.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I assume at this point in history, these are all prop planes, right?
Absolutely. The turbojet is
all
not
bi
even
and triplanes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny though, like you say that, like I used to fly RC helicopters a lot, and like there is something just amazing about just watching something fly. Like it's very counterintuitive. Like it kind of breaks my monkey brain to just see something, especially hover, especially when it's large, when it's something like an aircraft, and like. Airplanes now, like you watch them at the airport, they're like the size of buildings, and they're just like lumbering through the air gracefully.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a magic to it, and the Wright brothers actually, not to bring it back to them, but they would watch the vultures soar off the dunes, and they would hover in the air, and they'd watch them fly. That's where they got their ideas on how to control the airplane. They watched how the birds controlled themselves.
Yeah, makes sense.
Twisting their wings and whatnot. So we get barnstorming.
There was the flyer in Wild Wild West, the Air Gordon. That was actually the first airplane. Remember, he models it off the Wasp. Nobody else watched Wild Wild West.
Nope.
Okay, I'm all right.
I know it's
fine.
a thing. I know it's got Will Smith, but you lose me after that.
It's pretty charming in that '90s sort of way.
Sure.
It was kind of like steampunk Men in Black.
Okay, I can understand that. All right, so anyway, flying circuses, barnstorming. It's very dangerous work. Obviously, these airplanes have a tendency of, the engines just quit. They're made of wood and canvas, and they're wood's liable to rot. Canvas can tear. So you get, airplanes folding up in midair.
Also,
That's
so you
common.
have
Oh no.
you're also using like a primitive internal combustion engine on
Very.
something that's made out of flammable material as well.
Yes. And yes, and you're using various grades of fuel and aluminum can. Anyway, so these flying circuses too, especially in the bigger cities, it's like, well, okay, I've seen that trick before. I've seen you fly circles and eights. Do a loop, right? Do a barrel, make it more exciting, make it more interesting.
Yeah.
And so now you get wing walkers and people, juggling on top of the airplane. I don't know if they actually did that, but stuff like crazy stuff, stunts, right? Playing tennis. There's a picture of two people playing tennis on an airplane wing, with a net in the middle, and just all these crazy things. People are dying. A lot of people are dying.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think that we talked about how after World War I, it's like, can we use these in a way that doesn't kill people? But the answer is still no. Actually, at this point.
yes, unfortunately. So now we're going to see a pattern emerge of basically something bad happens in aviation. There's a crash, people die, and then something is done about it. There's a saying, I think it extends beyond aviation to like ocean-wide, like regulations are written in blood. And we'll see several examples of this later on. So
I mean, I feel like that's the case with a lot of regulation, right?
yes,
In some cases, it's
aviation in particular.
Yeah, and in some cases it's like, okay, maybe they should have had a law about that, but in other cases it's like, if it's a new thing, you don't even really know what the law should be until after something bad has happened, unfortunately.
Which is why it takes a decade for anything to be done about this. So the first kind of commercial application people figured out was airmail, right? This idea, here's a sack of mail. Fly it to, we're in Philadelphia, fly it to Cleveland. It'll get there way faster than a horse-drawn cart or a truck could, right?
Sure.
So from about 1917, 1918 to about 1925, 26, it's kind of vague with the dates. Airmail was entirely done by the United States Post Office Department. So it was post office airplanes, post office pilots, post office navigation, light beacons, post office everything. And
I want to live in the alternate timeline where the post office just assumes the duties of the Federal Aviation Administration.
In order to fly anywhere, you get stamps and stick them on yourself.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't want to live in that reality.
It's funny.
Have you been to the post office?
Jonathan has to wear all those has to wear that blue shorts and whatever the postal people wear.
I don't know. That's where I got my passport. It wasn't too bad.
That by itself is a funny thing to point out, though, that the post office is also the place you go to get your passport. So it's not, because government agencies, not everything they regulate makes sense as being under the same, umbrella.
There was a Chinese philosopher, I can't remember his name, but he said that to categorize things is to lie, because eventually you break things down ad absurdum.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I was going to say, it's interesting, though, because the first missions you take in Elite Dangerous are also postage missions, because your ship is small and stupid and can't carry anything, but it can carry a message.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when I started Elite with you, that is not the first missions I did.
Well, that's because I carried you.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, I got this little Sidewinder. Let's, all right, yeah, take me into combat. Let's go.
Yep. 1925, we get the Airmail Act, first of many pieces of legislation affecting commercial aviation in the U.S. So basically, the Airmail Act of 1925 opens airmail to commercial operators, right? Allows companies to private industry, right? Boom, we're doing private industry, and that works out kind of well. We'll check back in on the airmail in a bit.
Yeah.
So the Air Commerce Act of 1926 is the next big piece of legislation, and this is this is the Roaring Twenties, right? This is the heyday, kind of the golden era of aviation, in some people's opinion. I think it's
Is this like when
anyway.
people
We'll get
start
that.
to do like passenger flight? Because I imagine initially it's probably like prohibitively expensive, kind of like how space travel is now. But like
Kind of, and it's also pretty undignified. It's very loud, it's very smelly, it's messy. It's like there's oil leaking.
Yeah, you're like sitting in like an open cockpit still behind the pilot or whatever.
It's like it would be like riding in the back of a race car.
You have to wear those
like...
silly goggles and scarves and things,
Yeah, it's pretty rough going. It's very cold up high.
We just have to be in Paris in time for the wedding, darling.
Well, the planes also can't make it across the Atlantic at this point either, so I think
it's
maybe my characters were in Great Britain.
That's how the alternate again, the same alternate timeline, that's actually how the aircraft carrier is invented, is just a series of ships going across the Atlantic that you land on and refuel.
Oh my god. Yeah. I guess, sure. So the other thing too is at this point in time, the people who can afford to travel by air would rather travel by train or steamship, because it's much more luxurious.
How the turntables!
They probably have their own train. They have their own train cars at this point.
I think some people do actually. At this point in history, there are private carriages, I believe.
Oh. It's the weight. Airplanes can't carry a lot of weight, so everything is lightweight and flimsy. And
how many aeroplanes do I need to hook up my private train carriage to?
Oh, God.
I would like to play billiards on our way to Baltimore. You see.
Could you fly very straight and level, please?
Yes, I do want him to roll. Okay, so the Air Commerce Act 1926 creates the aeronautics branch of the Bureau of Commerce. So originally the FAA is part of the Bureau of Commerce. They take over radio and light navigation beacons from the post office. Becomes in 1934, the aeronautics branch becomes the Bureau of Air Commerce. It becomes its own bureau, because it's at this point you're starting to get primitive airlines, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, Braniff Airways, some of these others start to pop up. They're actually making money. There's Boeing is in the business now of designing cabin airliners. The Douglas company is making this is actually people are starting to figure these things out. They're getting cabins. It's actually starting to become economical to transport people by air.
Wait, you mean if we separate the mechanical components from the passenger compartments,
yes,
people will want to actually fly in these?
Yes. Also interesting this time, a big player in the aeronautics industry is Ford. The Ford Aeroplane Company is the Ford Engine Company.
This is
the
Ford.
They make cars
the Ford
today.
Airplane Company is the FAC.
BMW did planes originally. That's why their logo is the prop, and then like Saab does car. Like a lot of the
that one's actually what do they call it? Common misconception.
Which one is that?
The BMW. People
really?
think it's designed to invoke a spinning propeller, but it's just Bavaria. They're just paying homage to the.
Well, that's
German
less
state of
cool.
Bavaria.
So
it is less cool, which is why the roundel being a prop prevails.
They're a bunch of krauts anyway.
In my same alternate timeline that I keep going back to, I think the Ford F-Series, instead of being pickup trucks, are a series of like fighter aircraft that Ford sells to the U.S. government and other buyers.
Yes.
The F-150 is the most popular fighter aircraft in the world, I'm told.
Indeed.
Half-ton payload capacity.
Okay. It's actually not great when it comes to payload fighters. Anyway, well, it would be for the 1930s actually. Yes, the Bureau of Air Commerce. In 1936, the Bureau of Air Commerce starts to take over control towers. This idea of somebody being up in a tower watching airplanes move around and giving radio signals and light signals to control airplanes. Hey, you can land, you can take off, that kind of thing. And then they start creating this prototype of national air traffic control. This concept of a a unified structure. It's not really. It's
Yeah.
only just starting to come together. Around this time, we have the Airmail scandal, which is, quite frankly, it's its own episode of Kakistocracy. That's just a disaster beginning to end. Yeah, it's people died.
Do you have spark
It was
notes on
a good
that?
time. Not really.
Yeah, what happened?
Basically, there was a bunch of corruption in how the airmail contracts were awarded. There's just this meeting where they're supposed to, bid and compete, and there's just this meeting of, okay, you get this one, and it's like, no, that's not how you're supposed to do it. And then FDR was like, no, don't do that. I'm gonna have the Army do it. Screw you all. And then the Army was not prepared to handle that, and lots of Army airplanes crashed and people died.
Oof.
And the mail did not get delivered.
Oh no!
The earliest known use of the kamikaze was actually to deliver mail.
Jesus.
And then basically it ends up going back to a totally corrupt awarded system. Anyway.
It's kind of like you can't win sometimes, folks.
Yep. So
let the mob control everything, or let it all fall apart, right?
If you're gonna have crime, it might as well be organized crime, as Terry Pratchett would say.
Yes. So now we talk about our first of many specific crashes. TWA Flight 6, a Douglas DC-2. This is a fairly modern airliner, cabin airliner. You've probably seen its bigger brother, the DC-3, very famous design. May 6th, 1935, crashes in Missouri, killing 5 of the 13 people on board. They were doing what many pilots of the day did, which is when bad weather came, they would just fly lower and lower. And lower until eventually their wingtip clips a tree.
So this is the first passenger airplane crash?
No, not even close.
Okay.
This one matters because one of the dead people is Senator Bronson Cutting of New Mexico.
So an important dead person.
Yes. This starts another tradition in the U.S. Congress of when one of their own dies in a plane crash, they pass a law affecting aviation. It doesn't necessarily, prevent the crash from happening again. It just, does something. So
it's just like an act of retribution on just aircraft in general. Like, you kill one of us and we'll make it more annoying for you to exist. Doesn't actually do anything to help.
Yeah, they just want to be more careful on their flights so they don't have to deal with the red tape.
And the laws specifically governing the safety procedures on aircraft when an elected official is aboard at no other time.
Yes. Another case of this tradition is the 1972 disappearance of Senate Majority. The House Majority Leader, I believe, Hale Boggs and Nick Begich. So 2 representatives on a small Cessna with a pilot up front. They just disappeared in Alaska. Nobody knows where they are. They still have not been found. Results in the 1973 congressional mandate requiring emergency locator transmitters. Kind of the black box that pings. These emergency locator transmitters generally activate about 25% of the time when an airplane actually crashes.
That seems like a not great success
It's
rate.
not great, no.
Yeah, not really.
Usually...
here's the thing. I mean, it's a plane crash, though, right? I mean, like shit's gonna get mangled and exploded. 25%. That's statistically relevant, though. If you survive because they find the wreck, and you're among that 25%, that matters to you.
That's an interesting question. Is it the more dramatic the aircraft crash is it less likely to activate, or is it if it's a gentler crash, is it more likely to activate? Because I assume a gentler crash would also be more likely to leave survivors.
That's the one where
it's kind of a bell curve. So most crashes are either a somewhat controlled landing, or it augers straight in and it's total destruction. Obviously, total destruction, it's pointless, right? But in the case, with airliners, actually, they armor the beacon to the point where it will be one of the only things that survives,
Good,
and even in a
good.
total crash.
Insert obligatory joke about why don't they just make the whole airplane out of the black box stuff or whatever, even though that's not how engineering works.
Yes,
Yeah,
we'll
if
just
I
make the
understand-
airplanes. Yeah, then it doesn't go anywhere.
The current airliners, like the glide slope on them is very forgiving. So if there isn't something that's like catastrophic that happens to the plane, it's usually, they can land on a highway or in a field or, make it to an airway or whatever, even if like the engine's shut off. Right?
No, they
or-
don't. They don't glide well. What they generally have is a spare engine that can carry them all the way to an airport.
And by spare engine, we should be clear, because I remember Professor Wilson's joke about this when somebody asked him why the plane had two engines, and he said, well, if the one stops, then we can just turn the other one on and keep flying. But what you mean by that, for the viewers who might not know, you have all the engines on at the same time. It's just that typically, if one goes out, not all of them are going to go out at the same time, and you can still at least limp the plane a little bit.
Yes.
With one
to land
when you're building
safely.
an airliner, it has to be able to keep flying on the one.
Well, no, when
even though it
people
has
bring
two.
up, I brought up the glide slope thing because people ask, like, well, why isn't there just like a big parachute on the plane? Have you ever
Because
seen
parachutes
that
are
where they're
heavy.
like-
Yeah, like it would have to be the world's most massive parachute to safely land like a fully loaded passenger jet. And then that, just the act of having that thing, adds a lot of weight and complexity that actually makes it like more dangerous. Plus then you have to figure out, like, it probably could only be deployed at like certain speeds and angles and things like that. So
Yeah, that's just not feasible.
So this is where we get into airlines are cheapskates, and we'll get into why they're cheapskates later on in the episode. But airliners they're all about their profit margins and cutting weight and everything, which is why airline seats have holes in them, and it's all about weight reduction. Small aircraft, specifically the Cirrus Corporation, makes small aircraft that have integral parachutes, and they have saved many lives.
Huh.
Cool.
Yes.
I was going to say, that's why it's surprising that Southwest is doing the vaccine mandate to fly on Southwest, is because in theory that extra mass from the vaccine and all of the passengers is really going to add up. They might not have that if they didn't have the mandate.
Well, and it makes you magnetic, which can mess with the...
all that graphene oxide in your veins. Yep.
We need all of the vaccinated passengers to please head to the Faraday cage compartment. We're doing an IFR landing.
Yep.
Please turn your vaccine to airplane mode.
Yeah. Oh boy. Other thing about ELTs, they activate 25% of the time and say, okay, well that's acceptable. Something else that's kind of relevant is 97 to 99%, depending on how you play with the data, of activations of ELTs are false alarms. So, they get shorted out. People accidentally push the button. They land on a runway and they're fine, but they land a little too hard, so they trip the
fire
switch.
alarm.
That kind of
pilot
thing.
hits the wings fall off, wings stay on button the wrong way.
It's mostly actually maintenance and people taking them out and changing the batteries, that kind of thing. And that ends up them going off. But so again, it's like, okay, here's Congress, they're mandating this thing, and there's a good chance it wouldn't have found these two senators, but congressmen. Anyway.
But it makes us feel better after the fact.
Yes. So 1935, right? There's this crash. 1938, we get the Civil Aeronautics Act, which creates the Civil Aeronautics Authority, and this is the kind of the prototype of the FAA. And it took them a few years to work this one.
So is this like an X?
Law.
It's like an ex-FAA then?
Sure.
Like, an X-plane, but it's like the ex-FAA because it's a prototype?
Yes, I understand. Yes, I see
Sorry.
what you're getting at now.
Yeah.
It took me a minute.
It's all good.
So 1940, President Roosevelt splits the Civil Aeronautics Authority into two agencies, the Civil Aeronautics Administration, we're getting closer, and the three-member Civil Aeronautics Board. The CAB later becomes the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB.
Lovely.
Yes, I'm seeing that. So the CAA, that's actually the CAB at this point, has total control over airline operations. Like,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is like alphabet soup.
Yes.
kinda.
So the Civil Aeronautics Authority, think again, proto-FAA. The government at this point has total control. They decide where airlines can fly, what routes, how often the schedule is. No, not in the air, but actually they can in the air too. They can order an airplane around.
I just meant they have to fly in the air generally.
Yes, they order them to fly in the air, but like how many times a week the route's going to fly, and what price the ticket is to fly on that route. Like the government
control pricing.
They control pricing.
I thought America was capitalist. Sorry, we're not going to talk about politics.
How does the price control help with like the safety of the airline? Are they worried about the airlines like undercutting each other and then that leading to a race to the bottom where like they're not doing proper maintenance or something, or what?
Possibly, because that's kind of what they did after the airlines got deregulated. But yeah, I haven't really read into the justification for why. It's just kind of like, no, this is how we're going to do it. The government's going to control the airlines because we're not going to let the free market decide this. We're just going to tell you how it is, for safety's sake. So yeah, by setting the fares too, they charge extra for transcontinental flights to subsidize short haul flying. And yeah, anyway. Yeah, so they were also pretty bad at this. As a quote here, the CAB had earned a reputation for bureaucratic complacency. Airlines were subject to lengthy delays when they applied for new routes or fare changes, and these were not often approved. For example, World Airways applied to begin a low-fare New York City to Los Angeles route in 1967. The CAB just studied the request for over 6 years, only to dismiss it because the record was stale.
That's just incredible.
Yeah. Continental Airlines began service between Denver and San Diego after 8 years, only because the United States Court of Appeals ordered the CAB to approve their application. Yeah.
Why though?
So it's just a bunch of stubborn bureaucrats.
I'm wondering, is it people, because like the early aviation was so early controlled by the military and by government, and like they want just to control the airspace. They just don't want things in the airspace because it's like, well, maybe we want to run a drill, or maybe we want to do an exercise there, or maybe
that
we just
becomes
don't want
more of a thing that grew out a little bit out of wartime. Like Eastern Virginia, for example, was one big no-fly zone because of the Naval Station Norfolk, for example. There's probably a little bit of that, but yeah, this persists until 1978, which we'll get to later. But so yeah, CAA took over airport towers, control towers as well, not just the radar controllers. They kind of took over everything. And during World War II, and that kind of stuck post World War II. They just kind of agreed upon at this point that yes, the government is going to have air traffic control. That's going to be the government's responsibility. But prior to this, that like dispatching of airplanes and tracking of airliners was done by the companies themselves, like that their private air traffic control, and it helped them track their schedules and their airplanes, but they didn't really know where anybody else was. And at the time it worked because there's a lot of sky up there.
Operating on the theory, what are the chances that we would really just happen to run into another airplane?
Well, yes. And that works mostly until the 50s. By the mid-50s, the sky is big, but it's becoming alarmingly routine for two aircraft to smack into each other.
Why
Oh,
don't you just blare rap music so that they hear you? It's
Yeah,
like a
Soul
Harley Davidson.
Plane.
Why don't we do like a Futurama where, you know, they can't go faster than the speed of light, so they just increase the speed of light? Like the sky is the same size, but now there's more airplanes. Why don't we just make the sky bigger?
Well,
Damn,
they're
dude, that's what
working
space
on that
travel
with,
is.
global warming and all that, expanding the atmosphere. But
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. If we
yeah.
melt all of the ice and all of that evaporates and like goes, as it gets hotter, more things will become gases and we'll get more sky. Hell yeah.
Okay, yeah, I follow. Okay.
yeah,
They're making room for all the drones now.
Yes. So, oh gosh, yeah. That could be a whole other episode. Unmanned traffic management.
Well, all the drones are
Get a
supposed to
paper on
stay down below 400 feet. That's the solution to that problem, I think.
That's the
currently.
temporary stopgap solution that we have on the books now. But it's in the works.
It's in the works, but is it going to be like one of those government things where it's like we're coming up with a plan to fix this, and then it's like 30 years later they're like, okay,
we'll get to that. We'll get to next gen. We'll get there.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
So 1956. And oh my goodness, I left the date off of this. That makes me look bad.
That's fine.
Grand Canyon
whatever.
crash. You can look it up.
At
It's
some
very
point
solid.
in 1956, an aircraft crashed in the Grand Canyon. Apparently,
If you hadn't have said anything, I wouldn't have noticed.
honestly, yeah, that's very true.
Okay.
Honestly,
So
you could have just
it
said
happened
in
in
the
1956.
1950s, and I would have been like, "Wow, he knows so much."
Look, the last episode, because it was so long ago, a lot of the dates are kind of unclear, so I intentionally left them out. Like, for instance, when Nero poisons the other guy who might be the heir to the throne. Like, that's not entirely known what date it happened. It's just known that it's before his birthday. And so, like, there are some sources that make it dramatic, like the day before, and there are others that are like, maybe it happened like a month or two before. So that's why I just said, like, a few days before his birthday, he, like, mysteriously dies. So just pretend...
Guy right before his birthday, though, that is pretty cold.
Just pretend that, like, this is also ancient history. And, you know, we would know when this plane crashed in the Grand Canyon, but it's just been lost to the depths of time.
Well, in the time you've been discussing it, I looked it up. June 30th.
Excellent.
Hey, summer vacation.
Yes, it's the summer. So United 718, Flight 718 is a Douglas DC-7. We've advanced a little bit by now in the Douglas.
The DC-8
line.
is the one I know, I think. Right? Isn't that a
that's
popular
a jet.
one?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yep. And the Trans World Airlines TWA Flight 2, Lockheed
Flight
Super
2.
Constellation. Flight 2. Yep. It's a Lockheed Super Connie. It's a big prop plane. These are both very modern airliners.
If I'm ambitious
radar.
enough, there will be a Kerbal Space Program recreation of this playing as he talks about this. So there we go.
Yes. So these two modern airliners with veteran flight crews smack into each other over the Grand Canyon. The general theory is that they were both dodging clouds and were on opposite sides of the same cloud and then turned into each other. Is one of the theories. They don't really know exactly how they crashed.
I think they were trying to high five, probably.
Sure.
Like, they were like, if we just get the angles right, I know we can do it.
They were trying to do that thing in Top Gun where they go inverted over the other one to flick them off.
There
you go.
What if they were both just like transfixed with the stunning beauty of the Grand Canyon?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking they were probably just was like, wow, they totally. Both set of pilots were just like, wow, this looks so beautiful and amazing from up here.
I wish I could just ask God right now how this.
I bet like the view. What it was is as they were passing, the view was best from the side of the plane, so they just put it on autopilot, and even the pilots were just up against the side of the glass, like ooh.
Oh.
I bet the crash itself would have looked really cool too.
I mean, that theory works.
It would have really added, yeah.
The weather wasn't great So I've flown in similar conditions to what they allegedly were. If it was like how I'm thinking it is, they wouldn't have been able to see the ground all that well.
Okay, well, I choose to believe they were looking at the Grand Canyon.
Damn, just ruined my theory.
Yes, you can choose to believe. That's okay. We don't know for sure. So yeah, two modern airliners smacking into each other again doesn't exactly spur public confidence
For sure.
in the system. The government says something's got to change. So there's two other crashes that kind of really seal the deal. Something especially with air traffic control needs to change because you got United 736. Not a great year for United Airlines.
When was there a great year for United Airlines in recent history?
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good point. So over Las Vegas, an Air Force F-100 Super Sabre fighter jet hits a United DC-7. Yeah.
This guy actually
Holy
was
shit.
trying to do the Top
49
Gun thing,
people
right?
die.
Not so lucky, number 7.
Yes. Oh, also I don't think I mentioned the death toll in the Grand Canyon crash. That was 128 people died. Yeah, that was the most deaths in a aviation accident up to that point, which was very quickly eclipsed by multiple additional crashes. So both jets were under air traffic control at the time. The Air Force Super Sabre and the United DC-7, not jets. Sorry, one's a jet, one's a prop plane. But the Super Sabre was controlled by a military controller, and the United controller was controlled by a civilian controller, and the different controllers were unaware of the other aircraft. This is why modern air traffic control in the U.S. is integrated. Military and civilian controllers share the same equipment. They have the same screens. They talk over the same data links. They are integrated.
Good. And then, like,
Makes
if they're doing like super sneaky like stealth plane testing, is it just that like the military controller like sees where all the civilian stuff is and tells the super sneaky plane to like just not fly into them or something?
I imagine
maybe?
it works like share screen on Discord.
Probably.
Yeah, you just share your screen and then like you go into streamer mode if you're gonna run your stealth ops, I guess.
Okay.
Sure.
Good.
I mean, yeah, they have blocks of airspace. Anyway.
Yeah, there's also
That's
the big area around a certain place in Nevada that if you fly there, I'm pretty sure it's not good.
Oh, you mean Groom Lake?
Yeah, that one.
Area 51. Yeah.
The place that all the kids were gonna Naruto run or whatever.
Naruto.
I don't watch anime. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Sometimes I like to snowboard like that with my arms swept back.
that actually seems like it would be cooler. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It actually kind of helps me keep my balance.
Yeah, snowboarding like that seems like it would make a lot more sense than running like that. So
I don't know. Depends on how fast you're running.
So it's kind of an aside. This is more of a stab at just the F-100. This is one of 116 F-100s lost in 1958 alone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
how many were in the fleet?
Several thousand.
Okay, I was just like, what percentage of all F-100s crashed?
I believe it was nearly 50.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa!
God damn.
This was a time in aeronautic design when very much it was well, we kind of have to build it to see how good it is or not.
That's a
my gosh.
trap.
But they had to build like 3,000 of them to figure that out, I guess.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't have stopped after 500 or so.
Here's the thing is they started machining the parts before they realized what they had. And it's like, well, we already have like 3,000 wing struts, so we can't change the design without like scrapping all of these like really hard to manufacture parts.
I guess in the 1950s, Air Force training isn't quite as intense as it is now, so like the pilots' lives are also valued lower or something like that. So like, well,
Yeah. Well,
wait,
this is
at
again.
what
So
point
this
didn't the Air Force, that was like World War II.
1947, I think, or was when the
when
Army.
the Air Force butted off from the.
the Army Air Corps turned into the Air Force or whatever.
Like some kind of mollusk creature. They like budded.
So so just kind of as an example, so the F-100 entered service in 1954 and left active duty in 1961.
So that's
Not
a
a good
pretty
run.
short lifespan.
Yeah, it was again not great.
They say it's better to burn out than fade away, kids.
When did the B-52 enter service?
It's very close to that time, and it's still in service.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
sometimes
say.
you do it right, sometimes you don't do it right.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, introduced February 1955. So the
Yep.
What did you say the F-100's first adoption was?
September 1954.
So literally this thing's a year, not even a full year. It's like half a year older than the B-52, and it got retired in like 5 years, and then meanwhile we're going to be flying the B-52 until like 2040 or 2050 probably.
Yeah, this was basically also at a time when engineers understood that swept wings were faster, but they didn't understand that swept wings did very interesting things when you stalled them.
They're less stable, right? Like
very unstable.
They have less roll stability.
Way less. So this thing had a tendency of just like flipping over and smacking into the ground at low altitude.
Hell yeah.
Also seems like something I would design in Kerbal Space Program. I think we were actually talking about that like a week ago. We kind of did
it looks great. It looks gorgeous. I had to pull up a picture because like I wanted, and it doesn't look like, it looks like a modern jet kind of does. It's like you wonder, it must be like in the small things where they fucked up.
Yep. The distance of the wing to the stabilizer in particular. That was anyway.
I love how one of the Google results is F-100 plane for sale. I'm actually genuinely curious.
Yikes! Thank you.
Yeah, I'd take a trainer.
I'm really genuinely wondering if there's. Come on, load you darn website. Get your very own F-100, 2 going up for sale.
I want to, was it the KA-24? No. Come on.
I do love how, like, some old fighters just find their way onto the civilian market somehow.
Yeah. There's several news articles about an F-104 that went up for sale. That was an even more spicy.
I love how one of the ones that's for sale here said that it had a mishap where the aircraft failed to slow down on landing and it skidded into a ditch. Like,
that sounds about
even
right.
even one of these is like, has had an incident in the past.
Yeah.
KA-23, that's the one I want. Though I don't know what their lifespan is.
It is a kind of cool looking plane. I'll give it that. It is also, I joked about how it is like the default Kerbal Space Program fighter jet. Just like a couple fuselage sections, like intake at the front, engine, single inline engine in the rear, and then just like those like standard wing sections that you don't even have to custom make yourself. Just like the pre-built ones. You just throw a couple of those on the side there and like bam, plane, done. But it does look cool. Like, I wish it wasn't such a turd.
Yeah. So as a reference, these airplanes would stall. That is, the lift would fail, and the other plane would drop out of the sky.
You know what the main problem I think it is? The nose isn't pointy
so
enough.
the airplane I fly, right, the Cessna Caravan, that my normal cruise speed is about 163 knots. About 170, 175 miles an hour. That's the stall speed of the F-100.
Nice.
Right, so you're coming into land at about 200 miles an hour, maybe a little more.
Fast.
Isn't that comparable to the F-16 though? Or
it's a little faster.
F-16 approach.
Because I've landed those in DCS, and like usually approach is around 200 knots. But maybe I'm landing maybe around like 160.
I'm talking about final approach though.
Okay, where it's like touchdown.
Yeah, you're touching at 200.
Okay, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I'm also bad at landing, so.
That's All right, we've thoroughly we've started from an F-100 crashing an hour.
Roasted this plane.
Yes.
F-100 roasted. You're canceled.
Look, the F-100 already roasted
As we do.
itself a lot.
Yeah,
So.
it's a self-roast. I mean, now to be fair, this thing was designed by a bunch of chain-smoking engineers with slide rules in the 50s, so you got to give them a little bit of credit.
From crashing and burning.
Anyway, so we were talking about like the story of how this led to more regulation or something.
Yes. So lost 116 of these F-100s. Nowadays we lose one airplane, military airplane. The whole fleet's grounded for weeks as investigation is done, which to the Air Force's credit, they did start when this thing was initially being designed, and they grounded it, but then they're like, screw it.
Then they just accepted it as like a part of operating the thing. Like, well, they'll get like about one crash every 3 days, and that's just sort of within tolerances.
So another interesting note on this United flight, apparently, I haven't found a whole bunch of data to corroborate this, but apparently several of the United passengers were working on a sensitive DoD weapons program, and they're like most of the executive staff of this program died in this crash.
So it was some sort of government cover-up, is what you're saying. They were trying to get rid of the evidence. It was one of the it's in Las Vegas, so it's one of the Janet flights, probably, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this
F-100. They also had multiple near collisions before, near misses, whatever, close approaches, between on this particular training flight, this particular training route, because it had the jet flying directly at the airline airway at the same altitude.
Well, yeah, you want to train them on how to
change
dodge
the route.
Yeah.
They didn't think, hey, maybe, or was that part of the test? It's like, okay, rookie, now dodge the plane.
Well, the rookie was on instruments at this time, so he couldn't even see.
Well, a real pilot can feel, when there's an oncoming.
Use the force. See, that's why Obi-Wan Kenobi said to switch off the targeting computer.
Exactly.
It's because you have to use the force to fly.
Yes,
and be
real
blinded
don't
by a
need
hazy horizon and not be able to know which way is up.
Look, all real pilots do use the force to fly. It's the force of lift.
As a real pilot, I can confirm this is fact. Okay, so then we have the last straw, Capital Airlines Flight 300. This is a Vickers Viscounts. It's a British turboprop.
That's the one with Leonidas on it.
Sure. May 20th of 1958, this crashes over Baltimore, so, DC's backyard. Crashes into a different, it was an Air National Guard Cessna T-33 Tweed. So, the T-33 is a Lockheed, it's T-37 Cessna. This is a Lockheed T-33 Shooting Star. It's an early jet. Kills 12 people. The only survivor is the pilot of the jet, because he was able to eject or bail out. Actually,
I want ejector seats in all airliners. I want to see.
Here we go to the weight again.
I want to see an MLRS, but it's an airliner, and it's just like hundreds.
Okay, that would be cool to watch. Just all these parachutes and rocket motors.
Isn't there a 10% chance you'll die from being ejected just from the whiplash?
It's a non-zero chance, yeah.
But I don't think it's that high though. I don't think it's 10% of all ejections.
Maybe with early ejection seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, considering airline seats are just you have the belt buckle, you're not wearing a harness, there probably would be a much higher chance of snapping your neck or something.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah.
Your entire spine just becomes like a slinky.
So, Capital Airlines Flight 300, 1958. Yeah, so the day after this crash, Senator Mike Maroney or Representative Hart Harris introduced the Federal Aviation Act. So that's it. We're done. We're doing something. This is enough.
You know what this means? He had that written and was just waiting for a plane crash so that he could go up on and drop the mic on him.
I stayed up all night last night. Sir, the plane didn't crash until, 11:53 p.m. What do you... look, I... Never mind.
I did 3 rails of cocaine to stay up last night to write this.
Possible. It was the 50s.
My interns
Late
all hate
50s.
me.
Yes.
I drank.
I
Yeah.
drank so much stale coffee. Was this before microwaves? Could he nuke the coffee back then?
Prototype microwaves existed, but they weren't a common household item.
Yeah, he's drinking.
I
cold,
stole
stale
a
coffee
prototype
to stay
military microwave to nuke the coffee.
As another side roast, this was the second of 4 fatal crashes in the space of 2 years involving Capital Airlines Vickers Viscounts.
Sweet.
Is that
So
why
they
maybe
had-
we don't hear of Capital Airlines anymore?
Yeah.
This might have had something to do with it. Yeah, we had Flight 67 in April of 1958. Then this crash in May of 1958. Then Flight 75, May of 1959. And then finally Capital Airlines Flight 20 in January of 1960.
Which
Also-
modern
Capital
airlines? Yeah.
Capital Airlines, are you depressed?
Oh, no. Oh.
Take a chance with Capital Airlines.
Capital Punishment Airlines.
Oh, God. Most
Which-
expensive way to execute.
Roll the dice on Capital Airlines.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, later that year we get the Federal Aviation Act of 1958, signed into law on August 23rd by President Eisenhower, which creates the Federal Aviation Agency.
He was
Yes,
also
no,
the
I
guy
know.
that put runways all over
That's
America.
the name
in
of the
form,
episode.
in the form of the
Not-
interstate system.
Not quite. We haven't gotten to the Federal Aviation Administration yet. That comes later. Yes. So, yes, we're an hour and 20 minutes in and or so.
Look, it's
and,
like we're gonna. It's fine. It's
Wait,
fine.
And now we've gotten
what is
to the
this
FAA.
one called?
Federal Aviation Agency. So we've got the right 3
So
letters.
it's still the FAA, but it's not the same FAA that.
we all know and
Yes,
love today.
Dude, I love the federal government. I fucking love the federal government, dude.
Yes.
It's you know what it is? They were all in fraternities at like Harvard or Yale, so the only way they know how to organize shit is by 3 letters. It's just like they can't do Greek because people would be like, "What the fuck? Why are you have a Charlie Beta Charlie?"
Yeah. Well, that they're the elites, right? They're the only ones who know Greek.
Right.
Yes.
There's
Okay.
probably equal amounts of hazing.
Yes. So this doesn't magically fix things, though, because 2 years later, 1960, we have the 1960 New York mid-air crash. A TWA, Super Constellation, sister ship of the Grand Canyon aircraft, crashes into United Flight 826, a brand new Douglas DC-8, which had entered
Ooh,
service
that's the
just
one
about
I
a year
know.
before. Yes, they collide over Long Island, killing 132 people, including 6 on the ground. Yeah.
Jesus.
Basically, the DC-8s was coming in at almost supersonic speed into a holding pattern at 10,000 feet.
Wait. The passenger airplane was almost going super.
Yeah, it was like almost 500 miles an hour.
Yikes! What is it like? Cruising speed now is like what 300 or
No, it's they're basically cruise speed. It's still about 500 miles an hour.
But they were
they're-
entering a holding pattern at cruise
Yeah.
speed. Okay.
And
Word.
then so
it's like if you went 60 miles an hour into your driveway, thinking that's
Yes.
a good idea.
Well, you're trying to make a sharp turn, but at high speed, which you can in an aircraft. It's just going to take a lot of space. In this
So,
case,
like-
they were 17 miles off course when they hit this Super Connie.
so
Nice.
like racing in GTA where nobody uses the brakes into turns. Okay.
Yes, it's like that. So this leads to a rule that limits aircraft to a maximum speed of 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Still in effect today. Student pilots still learn about this rule. Yet another example of rules being written in blood. Also another example of the FAA making a rule that probably wouldn't have prevented this accident anyway because the DC-8 had a bad radio receiver, and the beacon they were tuned to that was supposed to be good actually wasn't, and so they actually didn't know where they were, but people look over that because they were going really fast.
So they're like,
Yeah.
they were going fast. The problem was actually they couldn't talk to anyone. We're going to fix the going fast part, though.
I think they were talking, but they actually didn't have they didn't have it was a navigation radio that was out.
Well, I have sense enough that like if I have to look at my GPS, I get in the slow lane and go a little slower. If
Yes,
I know where I am.
this is prior to GPS, so no one has the sense to slow down when they're lost.
So when they're looking at their
There's
phones.
also like 4 people up here, right? And one of them is a navigator. So
His
why
whole
would
job
you
is
need...
just,
Exactly. Why would you need to slow down, right? The person with the throttles
Really,
is... Yeah.
I think that the way they could have solved this problem after the fact, they could have just fired the navigator.
Right. Yes.
or fix the beacon, or invent
Yes.
GPS.
So
Invent global positioning system.
Just casually launch an array of satellites.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so in 1967, we're moving up now. We're getting to the later half of the 20th century. The Department of Transportation is created, which renames the Federal Aviation Agency into the Federal Aviation Administration.
They were like,
there it
they
is.
probably had a different acronym cooked up, but like the FAA had was like, I just had like $1 million worth of jackets and coffee mugs made.
We
with
just put
FAA.
the sign up.
No, it's cool. It's a tax write-off. It's fine.
Can we come up with something that uses the same 3 letters, please?
Yeah.
When he says the name, can you pull up the meme where the girl sings the
Here comes the boy, hello boy, welcome, there he is here.
There is he. There. Oh wait. There he is. There's the boy. There he is. Do you know that one?
I can look it up when I'm editing the show.
All right.
Okay.
That could be good. All right, so 1967. By this point, so now we have the FAA. They have coast-to-coast air traffic control. They actually have radar. There are these regional centers that kind of centralize the control of various sectors. They're using technology that is, by and large, still in effect. In 1967, yeah, it's around the year 2000. The FAA figures out that maybe some of this stuff is out of date. We should work on it. They figured out what they wanted to do to modernize it somewhere around 2003. They actually started working on this stuff in 2007, and they're still working on it as of today.
Oh my!
This is I'm of course referring to Next Gen, which is
it stars Patrick
5G.
Stewart.
They're going to use 5G to track the planes.
Yeah, Next Gen is one of these things. It's like it's like the Matrix. Like it's just this nebula. It's just this thing. You almost can't describe it. It's a bunch of talking points that makes the FAA feel important.
It's a
and
series of
justifies
pipes
their budget.
that the airplanes will fly through.
They're gonna Bluetooth all the planes together.
Well, they've actually done. Okay, that one it's called ADS-B, and they actually did that, and it works great. I use it all the time.
So
it's
you say like they're
neat.
still using technology from, what did you say, 67 or 70?
Yeah,
from the
so like
60s.
when I file my flight plan, it
you're
gets
still
printed out
using,
on a
like-
paper strip that gets used to track my progress
You're
on
still
a
using
block.
like better, like you said that you're still using like better like peer-to-peer networking.
There's like
and
new
they still have-
technology, but also mixed with old technology. I
Yes,
That's
For
kind of
like,
cool. I mean, and like I said, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
so I have a late model iPad right next to my autopilot that was designed in 1980.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So here's an example of, as I pulled this from the FAA. So the en route automation modernization, or ERAM technology, replaced the legacy FAA host system. This is basically their radars. En route controllers can now track, this is 2015, they finally completed transition to this. En route controllers can now track as many as 1,900 aircraft at a time, up from the previous limit of 1,100. Coverage extends beyond facility boundaries, and this is possible because ERAM can now process data from up to 64 radars versus the original 24. Now you can see that's an improvement, but this is information technology we're talking about, right? Like, oh, we can do 1,900 targets as opposed to the previous 1,100.
So
yeah,
like, so the way radar works, right? It's basically you have like a tower and it sends out a ping, and that's like shit's like it. You have the plane also has the transponder, right? It's like broadcast. The plane is broadcasting, but are you also tracking the plane by like bouncing stuff off the plane, or are you mostly just tracking the plane by the plane's own transponder?
That's primary and secondary radar, and generally they actually use secondary radar, which is the transponder more, but if that fails, you still appear as a blip.
Okay, so
yeah, it's, think of it like an RFID tag, like, right, like you hold the thing up and the signal bounces off the transponder and the key tag, and it replies.
Wouldn't the sensible thing to do is to actually track them from like satellites? Because
that's part of ADSB. Yep.
Okay, word. Because like you're gonna want to, especially as like we put more stuff in space. It's like, okay, we're gonna need better radars for space, so that shit doesn't hit each other. Which I'm waiting for one of Elon Musk's many satellites. I'm waiting for his car to loop back around and like, take out the International Space Station.
That would be a heck of a way for that to end. Just a Tesla Roadster comes sailing through the ISS.
It takes out Hubble.
I want a B movie now that's the central plot point.
Oh,
it's just like
the car alters the orbit of a comet, and then the comet takes out Paris.
Stick with the car smashing into the station. That's way more cinematic.
Or you could do like a Star Trek the Motion Picture plot where like the car encounters a race of like technological aliens. It
becomes sentient.
And then exactly.
So this is kind of showing the slow, cautious attitude of just not changing anything unless they really have to. It's kind of left over from the old airline board, the CAB. It's like how engine technology in small aircraft is pretty much unchanged from the 1960s. We still are running around with carbureted pushrod air-cooled engines. Originally certified 70 years ago.
Push-pull bang suck, just the basic.
Yes,
engine.
But we don't have, automobiles used to be carbureted pushrod engines back then, but now we have, overhead cams, and we have fuel injection and all these great technologies. And
look, whenever I was flying and had to test the fuel, I took great comfort in the fact that there was a significant lead content in the fuel I was testing, that just seemed fun to me. I knew it, it helps with the chemtrails, right? Like the lead absorption into the bloodstream.
Right amount of nerve damage can actually steady your hand. That's what a lot of people don't. That's a medical fact, people.
Oh, good gravy. Yeah, that's all the other toxins I'm constantly exposed to.
I always appreciated all the lead fishing weights that I got to play with as a child as well.
So something I kind of hinted at before was the Airline Deregulation Act, which we're kind of jumping back in time here a little bit. President Carter signed this one on October 24th, 1978, which basically dissolved the Civil Aeronautics Board's oversight element, at least, of routes. Basically opening up the free market to decide how routes are flown and priced. And to put this gently, this disrupts the airline market because up until this point, running an airline meant your profits were guaranteed by the federal government.
Right.
Yeah. Now that's.
And are you saying that consumer choice kind of gambles with its own life a little bit? I'm just going to buy the cheapest airline ticket and maybe not think about what this company's doing to cause this price to be cheaper.
like what they're paying or not paying their pilots or their maintenance personnel, and or where they're getting their parts from. Hint: it's a bargain bin in Miami. That's true for everyone.
No.
They
Watto's
just don't want
shop
you to
on
know.
Tatooine.
That's
the
basically
only
was.
one who has this for part for DC-8, huh?
I'm pretty sure that shop was based on the aircraft part markets in Miami, because that's kind of how it is. Yeah, that's. But yeah, so this is why we don't hear about airlines like Braniff, TWA, Eastern. They were pretty big back in the day, but they were a little too big, a little too immobile. They went under in the 90s. Pan Am was another victim of the
Didn't
Airline
Pan Am get
Deregulation
bought
Act.
by someone though, or no?
Yeah,
Because like whoever bought Pan Am, why didn't you just go with that name? Like, it's such a classic, iconic thing. I feel like I would still keep flying Pan Am planes. Like, I don't know, at least in my
so
mind.
the name was bought again
Okay.
by I think they're a start. This guy's one. There's basically been multiple attempts to restart Pan Am, but
I want the
they've all failed.
2001: A Space Odyssey with the Pan American space plane going up
When
to
do
the
you get
space
Song
station.
Airlines? Do you remember Song Airlines? Am I remembering that one right? It was like the airline for women. Nobody? You
No,
don't
I
remember
have no
this?
I have no recollection.
That was a brand of Delta
Yeah.
from 03 to 06.
It was a
apparently.
sexist airline by Delta. Okay.
It was a safe space for women. Okay.
Okay, very cool.
Well, now with everybody freaking out on the airplanes, we'll have airlines branded to your cultural, so you don't have to interact with people who aren't in your
So
cultural
TWA
media
will restart
bubble.
as like the Trump.
Yes.
Trump
Pan
World
Am will be
Airlines.
for
Yeah.
libs.
No,
Pan
no,
Am
we're
will be
gonna-
for libs. And then
No, because the libs would be upset that American is in the name.
No, just restart Trump Shuttle.
Capital will be the one for the Trump supporters because it's capital.
No. Oh no.
Oh yes, the Capitol building. Yeah.
Oh no.
They really like that one. They had the big party on it.
Big party at the Capitol.
Yes.
The big igloo. All right. So, what are next?
So yeah, I don't want to. Again, I'm not necessarily here to bash on the modern, just a little bit, with next gen. It's a history podcast and not a political one, despite our best attempts to make it as such.
Yes.
Despite us constantly just referencing political events.
I think it's because we don't.
Indeed.
We've made a loose rule to not talk about historical events that specifically happened in the last 10 to 20 years. But I think if we reference something that started before then and is ongoing, that's fine. It's kind of like the chicken tax. We're really
I won't say if anything's good or bad or who's responsible. How about that? I just like being topical and cheeky. So that's all I'm trying here.
No, it's fun to make commentary. I just mean we're not going to cover certain things that happened recently as examples of Kakistocracy.
I stand by my Capital airline joke. I think that's a solid joke. I think that's a good pun. I think that deserves play.
You'll be.
It doesn't matter. That's funny right there. I don't care who you are to borrow. From
You'll be
Larry
charging
Actually,
in.
I've got. Here's now. Wait a second. Don. I
Okay.
think I've got a superior proposition for you. Capital Airlines is the exclusive airline of members of Capitol Hill, i.e. Congress.
I
think everyone can get behind that.
It can be filled with pillows and bubble wrap and stuff because it's safe.
Everyone has a parachute.
Just in case they crash. Yep.
And then
all
that's
these
the one
burned pillows and bubble wrap.
Yeah.
That's the one you play on the Minecraft server, redacted.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, so before we go, one last recent. This is an anecdotal story.
Okay.
I don't need to research this because I was there.
Ooh.
Cool.
Yes, actual history that
We
again,
have living
expert.
history. Right
Exactly.
in front of us.
Yes. So a couple years ago, I worked at a flight school. I was an instructor at a flight school, and we had one of our airplanes was a Beechcraft Duchess. It's a light airplane, it's a twin engine. It's a good trainer for twins. But the problem is, it wasn't built nearly as tough as a lot of our Cessnas. It was a dainty little Beechcraft, so it broke a lot. And one time it broke. It was because the gear, one of the lights that tells you whether the landing gear are up or down, the light broke. The landing gear were fine, but the light wasn't working, and that was because one of the relays that controlled the light was out. And it's a relay. It's a pretty simple electrical part, right? It's just an electromechanical switch. Well, the company that manufactured these relays is out of business for many years, and there were none in stock anywhere.
And we
in the
couldn't.
country.
They couldn't find any other piece of like electrical equipment
Well,
that would work.
And it's not like you can just go down.
You can
to,
3D print
the
one?
store. No, you can't go 3D print one. You can't take one that's similar. It has to be one of the parts that was specifically approved for installation in that aircraft. So they had to go to Kansas and have a shop fabricate in a technically identical part, then have that part inspected by the FAA, certified for installation.
This all sounds very
and finally
cheap.
installed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was about $30,000 in 9 months.
Oh my gosh.
This aircraft was down.
For like
Isn't
a
that-
fuse, essentially.
How much is the
Jesus.
plane worth?
Probably about $500,000.
Okay, all
$750,000.
right. So that's a little. I've seen really cheap planes. I every now and again I shop for like just cheap dog shit planes.
What type
And
of
they're
plane
like-
is it again?
This is why they're cheap. That was about $30,000, $30,000.
No, but what type of plane is the?
Oh, it's a
one?
Beechcraft Duchess. You might be able to
Beechcraft
find one online. I
Duchess.
was
That is a
spitballing.
beautiful name.
That is a beautiful name.
Yeah, it's a
Beechcraft
Beech Model
Duchess
76.
for sale. Well, this one.
Oh yeah, that's a cool
These
plane.
are older and used, so I don't know how good shape this
Okay, I've
one's in.
seen these.
This one's like $130,000. It looks like.
Oh my, that one must have serious issues with its engines and
Yeah,
avionics.
and then there's there's another one, and it just has call for price. So,
that can go either way.
yeah.
Yeah. So another example of this, I have a Ford alternator in my airplane that I fly at work, but it's PMA certified by the FAA, Parts Manufacturer Authorization. That's what PMA stands for, which makes it literally 50 times as expensive. So example this, a Ford alternator costs about $150 in the open market. A Lycoming alternator, which is not a Ford, but it's equivalent to aviation. They're very common. Depending on the installation and certification requirements, anywhere between 1,000 and 6,000.
Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you throw like a cool air intake on there and like maybe like a body kit?
As long as you get a supplemental type certificate for every change you make to the aircraft. Each of which has to be improved.
If I paint flames on the side of the airplane to make it go faster, does that require the FAA to reapprove the aircraft?
Or
Only
like
if
a
it
hot
sufficiently affects the glare effect on the pilot.
I could see that actually.
If I paint a hot girl named Betty on the side of the aircraft, but she's like too hot and it distracts the other pilots, is that considered glare?
That's a good question. I think that would depend on your flight standards district office. You have to talk to your local FAA rep to determine the.
Like, there's rules
ratio on
about
that.
not being obscene on public airways. Like, can you show an obscene image on the side of your plane as you're flying? Yeah, that's a good question.
That's actually a really good question. Yeah, I don't think anyone's done that. I mean, the military has for sure.
I want to do up like
But
a
they're
big
the
cargo
military.
plane, like a van with like a wizard fighting a dinosaur.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
We do like camouflage on aircraft, but we just make them look like, we paint the wings something that is very hard to distinguish from the sky, and then just paint a silly scene on it, and people just look up and are bewildered by like, what is happening up there? It's like the belly of the plane is just Superman like flying, and then the rest of the plane is just a light blue color.
Oh my goodness.
Well, then, as we established earlier, if it looks like Superman, then it's not a plane anymore. And then that's how you get out of your FAA restrictions.
Oh yeah, if Superman were real, would he be regulated by the FAA?
Probably.
Has the FAA?
Yeah. Well, okay. So
but he doesn't have a craft. It's like
let me posit my theory as to how he would not be regulated, because so Superman wears his super outfit, right?
Mm-hmm.
His outfit weighs what? 5 pounds?
But the outfit's not what conveys the power.
Yeah, he can fly naked.
Yeah.
But it's so the outfit is unpowered, right? But with Superman
so it's like
in
he's
the
a
outfit,
glider.
that makes it a Part 103 ultralight aircraft,
damn.
which is unregulated.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
However, it does. Part 103 does stipulate that Superman must make his suit available for inspection by the FAA at the request of the administrator.
And then I assume that Superman technically shouldn't be able to fly above 250 knots below 10,000 feet or something.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
he must abide by all other elements of Title 4, unless he got an exemption from the FAA, which of course you can always do.
Where would Superman, because now an ultralight is unregulated, but do they even have do they give them like a registration number, or is it totally unregulated?
It's totally unregulated, but you do have to stay out of controlled airspace.
So it's literally like, it's easier to have an ultralight than it is to have a drone, is what you're telling me. Because my drone, I had to register.
Climb into the ultralight.
To be fair, it's really easy to crash a drone into something when you're flying line of sight.
But you could also just buy an ultralight, and now you're flying around in a thing that is significantly more dangerous than most drones.
It's dangerous,
but
to
you are flying around in it.
It's dangerous to you, but you're probably less likely to run into another aircraft while you're in it, and you're easier to spot. But like a little drone, it's like it would be easy to hit, like especially like a sufficiently like large drone, like one for photography. It would be really easy to hit with an airplane and not notice it, especially if you're like if you were looking at your instruments. So it does make sense that like to regulate drones. And I'm someone who, like I said, I used to fly RC helicopters. I have a drone and I do photography, and I don't like studying for this big dumb test. But I understand why I have to study for the big dumb test. It is when you have my ADHD ass.
I'm sorry.
So one last little note I'd like to make before I'm out of material. So far we've been seeing this thing, right? 2 airplanes crash into each other. The FAA does something about it, or the government does something about it.
The next level of this, of course, is the Minority Report version, where they foresee the airplane crash and then stop it before it happens.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only way I think we're going to get to not crashing, because May 12th, 2021, Denver, Colorado, a Cirrus SR-22, that's the aircraft I mentioned earlier with the safety parachute, crashes into a Key West Air Metroliner. The Cirrus sustained significant damage, but the pilot was able to pull the safety parachute and land in a field. The Metroliner pilot was aware that something had happened, not that what exactly had happened. Thought he had an engine failure.
Oh, I was gonna be like, I think I might have hit a very large bird.
So his engine his number 2 engine had some issues. So he landed. He was already on approach. So he landed. Tower asked him, his intentions, he said, "I'm okay. I think I'll just taxi in," and he did. Yeah,
Just like
the fire truck
imagine
following.
getting hit by an airplane and not being aware that you were hit by another airplane.
Yeah.
That's
That's
like
wild.
yeah, and they look at the pictures of this too.
Let me look.
It
Yeah,
is.
let me look this up.
It's amazing. The whole top half of this Metroliner is just gone.
What's the
If you look Denver, Colorado midair 2021, or Key West Metroliner midair. Yeah, it's
Okay.
pretty nuts. Also, 2 years ago we had.
wow.
Yeah.
How do you
Oh.
not?
Oh.
Yeah.
Holy
So,
crap!
The fuselage is like it's like there's this. It's like they like opened up a skylight. It's like there's a sunroom
Yeah.
in the back of
Were
the
there not
airplane.
passengers on board?
This was a cargo.
Oh, this is a cargo aircraft.
Okay, good. I
The
love
win-
this.
The
This
windows
this,
are just for show.
dude. This is like I gotta give it to what type of plane is this?
This is a
Metroliner.
Metroliner.
Because like this is a pretty well built aircraft. I feel like to be able to. This looks like some sort of World War II B-17 photo
that's wild.
of like
Yeah.
part of the plane is missing and it
Well,
flies all the
it's
way
mostly
back.
just
Holy
like
shit.
it looks like it mostly just hit like the insulate like the roof basically like
But I
guess
feel like
there's
a
all of the
slightly worse impact and literally
Yeah,
the whole
you would've
tail
broken
is
your
gone.
tail
Wouldn't
off.
also
Yeah.
like because the
Damn.
cabins are like somewhat pressurized, right? So wouldn't
Yes,
that like release all of the pressure and
Well,
like...
if he's on approach already, I guess he's low enough that like the pressure difference.
He's depressurized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was built by Fairchild Swearingen.
Now Denver has a pretty high altitude too, so that has thinner air and would then hypothetically be harder to fly in.
Yes.
I love though that like the control tower just I need to listen to the audio of this later, I guess. But like I love that the control tower you said to just ask him like what's his status or something and he's like, "Yeah, I'll just taxi in." Like no one has the heart to be like, "Dude, like you know that like part of your airplane's missing,
Yeah.
right?" Like
Yeah.
I guess
They
I don't
don't
want
wa-
to
they
they
don't
don't want
wanna
to freak him
distract him,
out.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess. Like jeez.
It's like when you see your buddy has like a nail through his hand and you don't want him to freak
Yeah,
out.
ignorance is bliss.
Yep. Yeah,
What?
pretty much. Let's get the
So what are
props,
the
propellers
repercussions?
stopped.
So these guys kiss in air, and they both one floats down and the other lands, and then the FAA does what?
It's actually the NTSB that comes in and will
Oh.
investigate. The FAA will also do their own investigation to see if any rules were broken. In this case, it was the preliminary perusal of the data suggests the Cirrus pilot was a moron, which is, well, that's a known thing. Cirrus pilots are the BMW drivers. Of the
They don't
sky.
use their turn signals in the air. They're just-
No, and so
I
this
kind
guy
of
was
see that as you
supposed
said,
to be
it's like
lining up for a
it's
parallel
luxury.
runway,
Yeah.
and he just drifted over into
It's just
Metroliner's
because
lane.
Damn.
Cirruses
Oh,
are just
man.
like rich dudes flying like general aviation craft, like
Yes,
not for any professional purpose, but just
A,
like because
a new
they
Cirrus
want.
costs $1 million.
And
they,
you just
they do
need,
get
I guess
used
you just
for,
need single engine for that, right? Like you don't.
It
need...
is a single engine. It's a piston.
not
yeah.
high performance or anything. Most of them, I assume, right or no?
They are considered a high performance airplane.
Oh, okay.
For air horsepower wise, but yeah.
But not pressurized or any of the other fancy stuff or what?
No,
I don't
I
know.
think they have a they get pretty fancy on the high end.
Okay.
The Vision Jet's pretty nice.
Well, yeah, the jet one,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if like the basic Cirrus, if that starts a little,
Wait,
if
there's
it's-
a jet Cirrus as well.
Yeah, there
Yes.
is.
Oh,
it's
well,
like
I guess
a
they're
it's
like
like a
a
5 or
company.
6 seater jet, a single
I
engine.
believe it actually seats 7.
Oh, never. Maybe it's like the Bradley, like they keep finding ways to squeeze another dude in there, like.
Let's see. The Vision G2 can seat 7 people.
So what does NTSB do for this crash here?
So obviously they're gonna study it. It's gonna take them a while. Like for example, they are still working on the Kobe Bryant helicopter
Oh, wow.
crash. It
Yeah,
takes
I was
them
gonna say
usually about
normally
3
it takes a
years.
little
Well, that
while.
one, the Illuminati killed him. Okay, obviously. Come on. Like, come
Look at
on.
the data.
It wasn't that the helicopter pilot decided to fly in like horrible
Yeah,
weather.
wasn't it fog? Wasn't it like just
really
foggy?
bad fog. Yeah, and the helicopter is not equipped for handling that kind of weather.
I've crashed enough helicopters in GTA to know that you don't mess with power lines and poles.
Look, I've
Well,
played enough Just Cause to know that if the airplane is in a bad shape, you just jump out and grapple hook to another one.
That's the best part of
Right,
Just Cause.
yes.
That and like
It really is.
tethering a car to an airplane and then just turning it into a wrecking ball.
So yeah, that's the FAA.
So what?
Well, that's neat.
So I'm a little
Airplane.
curious because we're called Kakistocracy, and
Yeah.
like the FAA is. So there was a case. David Graeber brought this up about like an anarchist. I can't remember if it was the Kurdish or if it was like Madagascar, some Rhodesian thing, but there was like an anarchist society, and one of the problems they had, like it was fine, like everybody had food, like every like society worked fine and could be decentralized. But one of the things is they couldn't really run an airport for the country.
Yeah.
It's like and part of that was just like integrating with like global bureaucracy.
It wouldn't
and
be
I'm also
Rhodesia,
curious.
because Rhodesia wasn't really that anarchist.
I'm probably thinking,
like
yeah, I'm
Angola?
probably getting it mixed up
Rhodesia
with
is
something.
actually a future podcast episode, by the way. I started doing the research for that
Oh,
episode
hell yeah.
a couple days ago.
Ooh.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, it shows you how much I know about things. But anyway, but that's all that is to say, like, how do you keep planes from running into each other if not some kind of bureaucracy?
Yeah,
I mean-
either like you have to have some sort of bureaucracy or everyone just has to be perfect. Those are the two options, I guess.
I think you should have the pilot should have to wear a HoloLens, and the HoloLens just paints the other airplanes onto your HUD at all times. That's why
This is
that'll
a
be the
thing.
one
It's coming
redeeming
with next
feature
gen.
of the F-35
the military has
with the
it.
special helmet. Yeah. They just need to give that to the civil. They just need to give all of the pilots PlayStation VR, and then overlay that with with like the GoPro 360 camera. Just put that right on the tail.
Okay.
I mean, it's in the works. It's just getting the FAA to approve that.
Yeah, that's the other problem. Like
Yeah.
federal like agencies take forever to approve. Like you have to like if a company really wants to do something, I feel like it involves a lot of time and lawyers even once you develop the cool thing because like I remember it was something like somebody made a windshield that was like a smart windshield almost where it could like dim when brights were like in the oncoming lane, but it only dimmed in the spot where the brights were like shining through, so it didn't actually affect in theory like your
that's
vision
so
of
cool.
anything else. But like the government, I can't remember which government agency it technically is that does like, you know, highway like I don't know if it would also be the NTSB or if it would be like some other like car, I don't know. Whatever. The point is the like agency that regulates the cars and highway driving was like, no, this seems like a little too cool. Like we can't have this. Like, what if it broke? And it's like, well,
if it malfunctioned, it's like okay,
you have to
suddenly you can't
determine-
see.
you
Like,
have to
what is its failure
yeah.
state? If the glass fails, is it like completely opaque? Because that would be an issue.
yeah, I don't know the details of that fully, I guess, but like that's the sort of thing that would be like, okay, like you'd have to look into almost like, are more accidents caused by this thing or by like the lights blinding you in the oncoming traffic or something like that. So
It has to be peer reviewed and double blind and publicly funded and and longitudinal and it takes a long time. But like in the experimental aircraft category, we have electronic ignition and overhead cam engines and
Wait, these are
all
like
the
electronic ignition is like considered experimental in what?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Yes, the
Cool.
auto technology that's been around for 40 years is still considered experimental and untested in aviation.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Why FAA so slow?
That's a really good question.
Can I get a
It's-
tax stamp for my electronic ignition airplane engine?
Okay, so
Yes.
here's the real question. This is actually what's been burning in my mind is why do I have to watch that goddamn safety video every time I fly? Because
The Federal
literally
Aviation Administration, baby.
In
I'll
order
have-
to comply with that federal regulation, you must.
what crash caused that fucking travesty? Because like, okay, make it where you have to watch it the first time, and then like maybe you take little tests, and then you never have to watch it again.
But
because
then,
literally,
but then, like everyone on the plane, are you going to assume like there's someone on there that? I mean, the best part is the safety briefing when like it's you and one passenger in a small airplane, because you're still technically supposed to do a safety briefing, and it's just like, this is the airplane. The exits are the door that we came in through. Keep your seatbelt fastened.
So it is part 91, subsection 519A. Before each takeoff, the pilot in command of an airplane carrying passengers shall ensure that all passengers have been orally briefed on smoking, use of safety belts and shoulder harnesses, location means for opening the fastener entry door, location of survival equipment, ditching procedures, normal emergency use of oxygen equipment. Oral briefing shall be given by a pilot in command or a member of the crew.
Which is why we get
can
the
be
flight
delegated.
attendants.
Yeah.
Flight attendants do it. But need not be given when the pilot in command determines that the passengers are familiar with the contents of the
Ooh,
briefing.
Okay.
Okay.
so
If
that
you
means
can
I'm
prove to the
legally
pilot-
allowed to ignore it then if I'm familiar with it, because I usually
Correct.
put on my headphones into my phone and play video games.
And I would
when
I
it's
would
going
specifically remember that actual regulation, and then if a flight attendant ever taps you on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, you need to pay attention to the safety briefing," just be like, "Actually, according to like
subsection
14
19
CFR part, whatever."
She could spin around and hit you with, I believe it's 9117, that gives flight crew total authority in the air.
Okay.
Well,
but the
you're-
safety briefing is
whatever
on
they
the
The safety
ground.
briefing is on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't left.
Well, on board an aircraft.
Damn it.
But is it
Damn
really
it.
an aircraft if it hasn't left the ground yet?
Yeah,
It
technically
is
it's a car.
intended for flight.
It's
Intended
a
for
car
flight.
if the wheels are down.
Lord.
Yeah.
What if you ask the pilot if he intends to fly, and he's like, "I'm not sure yet."
This is that ad absurdum
No, see,
thing
Boeing
we talked
intended
about
for the
earlier.
airplane to fly when it was built.
Yeah.
Did Boeing intend for the aircraft to fly? Because I feel like they've been bad at that recently. So
Okay, that could be its own episode, but
If the plane is programmed to nose into the ground, can it legally be said to intend to fly?
oh gosh. No, that's why the FAA grounded the 737 Max for 2 years. But yeah. Oh, good times.
I love that, like, the FAA takes a million years to approve anything, but then I guess, like, the software auditing team or whatever didn't catch that little gem. Like, I don't know what was going on with... I guess, yeah, that would be a full separate episode, so we shouldn't
That
really get
is
too
its
far.
own freaking episode. Yeah. It's regulatory capture of
Yes.
the FAA.
Yeah. All right, well, I feel
neat
like...
shit.
Did you have anything else to say, Jonathan, or was that pretty much...
No, we've gone far and beyond everything I had written.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on Kakistocracy and telling us about the federal
I'll
aviation.
be back. I've
Oh,
got
yeah.
so much additional material.
Fantastic.
Thank you for
Yeah.
adding legitimacy to our amateur podcast.
Yes.
Well, it was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir, and we will see you next time.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Kakistocracy. The local time is 12 o'clock, high noon. Weather outside, it's scattered clouds up high. Looks like cirriform outside. Temperature is it's a brisk 7 degrees Celsius, about 45 Fahrenheit for you freedom lovers. Light winds out of the west, light jacket weather.